Uh, Perfect. Thank you. Hello and welcome to this wonderful divorce week. Thank you to Julia and Sue for having me. My name is Aoife Gaffney. I'm a certified money coach. And for the next 20 to 30 minutes or so, I'm going to give you some tools and techniques to manage your money mindset and also the practical side of money when it comes to separating or divorcing. So this is a little introduction to me. So I'm a certified money coach, one of the few certified money coaches in Ireland. I'm also a licensed hypnotherapist. I trained with the Divorce Coaching Academy as a certified divorce coach, a member of the Institute of Banking, lots of other things. I am a divorcee, so I do know what I'm talking about. And I'm also a parent. Uh, so I do speak from experience, and I am Mother of the Year, and I have a certificate to prove it. So I was a finalist in a Mother of the Year competition, and I do brandish that certificate proudly when occasionally I am chastised about my parenting style. So I'm divorced a long time, but when I was in that situation, I felt so overwhelmed, so broken down, and so completely broke. I was financially broke, I was mentally broke, I was spiritually broke, and I was broke because I didn't understand how I was supposed to figure out this money stuff. Um, and the relationship that I was in at the time, I allowed myself to be massively in debt because the other person in the relationship wasn't very good at managing money. And I had this unconscious belief that this is what men do and that women stay at home. So I allowed myself to be massively in debt. It took me about 5 years to shake that off, and then another 5 years to shake that off my credit history. So when I talk about money and how to organize yourselves and how to organize your money mindset, I do genuinely speak from experience with true compassion and empathy. So what do? I am a certified money coach. And I will explain to you shortly what money coaching is. So I offer financial planning and education for individuals, for couples, and for families, and particularly couples, whatever stage of the relationship you're at, whether you're at the beginning, the middle, or the end, when whatever stage of the relationship that you're in, this is what I offer. Sorry, that slide didn't progress. So how do I do it? I offer very practical techniques around money management, um, leveraged expenses, how to spend money to the best of your advantage, and I do some value-based spending as well, and how to get the most from the money that you are spending and where and when to use other people's money to your advantage. And I don't mean that in any negative sense, but there are lots of advantages to doing things with other people's money. So I also do what's called a money map. And that really just sort of maps out where you're at and maps out where you would like to go. So it's very clear about, very important to be clear on where it is that you are actually trying to get to and where you're coming from. So we need to put that map in place. And because I'm a licensed hypnotherapist and NLP master practitioner, I use other techniques. So I use a lot of hypnosis, if the client is open to it, and I'll use NLP techniques, and I'll also show you how you can use these techniques with yourself and in your communication. So it makes your communications with other people more efficient and more strategic. And I've done a lot of training around trauma-informed techniques, and I have lots of other strategies as well that I can show you how to use, because coaching is not about breeding a dependency. Coaching is about me giving you the tools that you can do this for yourself. Why do I do it? So, well, why use a money coach? It's cheaper when you are very clear around your own money mindset and very clear around what am I trying to do? What are my expenses? What are my outgoings? What are they likely to be? When you're very clear on that, it makes everything so much more efficient. And when you're clear and calm, everything is less stressful. The process goes more quickly. And I also offer a wraparound approach. So I will work in harmony with with your solicitor, with your mediator, or with whoever else you have on your team. And that could be a divorce coach, it could be anybody, but I will work in harmony. And coaching deals with the person, not the problem, because it's not up to me to fix your problems, but it is up to me to support you so that you can make the decisions that are right for you. And that's a very important thing to remember. And I genuinely wish I could fix your problems, but I don't know what answer is right for you. So I will help you reach that decision and support you emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, so that you do make the decisions that are right for you and that you get clarity on where it is that you are trying to go. So trauma, any kind of stress, can bring about an element of trauma. And trauma is where the neural pathways have become disrupted. And there is what's called the trauma loop. So the trauma loop is where you are really, really happy. Something happens to disrupt that place of happiness. And this is the trauma loop. So you can return to a safe place. You bring yourself into a safe place that could be physical or mental. And so then you can come back to this place of calm. So that's what's called the trauma loop. And what happens then, if that trauma loop doesn't get closed, what happens? So if this little part here doesn't happen, so you're very happy going about your business, everything is lovely, something happens to disrupt the neural pathways, which happens, so life is life. But if this little section here, if this pathway, if this loop doesn't get closed off, you stay in this space of trauma, and it can be conscious or unconscious, and there are different types of trauma. But if you stay, if this loop never gets closed, then all of your neurons are constantly firing. So everything past that point will seem like nails on a blackboard, regardless of how big or how small it is. And if you're in that space of constant and heightened anxiety, it's very difficult to make decisions. And it's very difficult to make decisions that are right for you because you genuinely have no idea whether you're coming or going. Like I said, there are different types of trauma, but sometimes it's an external event that then leads to unconscious self-sabotaging behaviors. And when I look back on myself, one of the reasons that I allowed myself to be so substantially in debt and the breakdown of the relationship that I was in at the time was my son was very ill and he was in and out of hospital and nobody knew what was wrong with him. And we had a couple of last minute dashes to the nearest hospital. Now that this 30 years ago before mobile phones. So I was running up and down the road to the public phone box to ring ambulances and things. So that was an unprocessed trauma. They were unprocessed emotions that I had never really been given the opportunity to work through. And so because my brain was constantly going at 1,000 miles an hour, I wasn't making good decisions, and I certainly wasn't making good decisions around money. But I'm aware of that now, and I have put procedures in place and have done a lot of work on myself to move to close this trauma loop. So what are you trying to achieve? Okay, so if you and your partner have decided or you're thinking about going your separate ways, what are you trying to achieve? And particularly when it comes to the money side of things, you say, well, we'll meet in the middle, everything will be fine. But if you don't know what the middle is, then it's quite difficult to know what it is that you're trying to achieve. So are you trying to, would you like to stay at home and look after the children? Would you like to return to work? Would you like to stay in the family home? Would you like to be able to take over that mortgage? So they're just some questions, what I call points to ponder. So begin with the end in mind. How would you like to feel? How would you like to be when you have come out of this process and everything is done and dusted? So when you focus on the end goal, start with what it is that you're trying to achieve. and be solution focused rather than using, because money can be used as a weapon. So just get clear on what it is that you want. Now, these are some very simple techniques that you can actually use for yourself if you do feel that you are in a place of anxiety and you are unable to think clearly or to make money decisions. So the first one is called the ego state, and that's not the ego in the sense of the kind of traditional sense, the ego in the sense of arrogance. Ego is just simply a state of mind. So let's say you are feeling annoyed or frustrated about something and you would like to feel calmer. There's a point on the back of the hand just above the little finger where the little finger meets the ring finger. So there's a groove there on the back of the hand. Simply just tapping on the back of the hand, tapping on the back of the hand and saying to yourself, whether quietly or out loud, the state that you would like to feel. So calm, calm, grounded, whatever it is that you would like to feel, simply tapping on the back of your hand. It works best if you can say it out loud, but if there are people present, you may not be able to do that. Simply just tapping on the back of your hand. The other option is you visualize the stressed out, frustrated you behind a glass screen. So that, and you are sitting where you're sitting, and this other you is sitting behind a glass screen. So you simply project all of the negative feelings that you are experiencing at this moment onto that person, and they are behind this glass screen. So that's okay. So it's, in a sense, you're kind of passing on all of those negative emotions that you want to feel onto a different you. And when you feel that you have done all of that, this person is behind the glass screen. You simply just turn your back and walk away. So you're just leaving all of that there. That's fine. So that's not you, that's the other you that you can then walk away from because they are in this enclosed space. And the other technique, it's quite similar. It's called the circle of excellence or the column of excellence, where you visualize how you would like to see yourself. And you put this person directly in front of you, and you have all of this beautiful light shining down onto this person. So this future, it's similar to the future you. So this future you is standing directly in front of you. They are dressed the way you are dressed. Their hair is the way your hair is at the moment. And they are surrounded by these columns of light or a circle of light. And they are exactly how you want to be and you want to feel when this process is finished. And when you feel ready, you actually physically step into that circle or step into those columns of light and you integrate that person into you. Now, all of these techniques can be done by yourself. I can talk you through them if you want, but they can be done in a minute or 2 minutes. So anytime you need to either go into a meeting or maybe it's a mediation, or maybe you need to go and meet somebody else on your team, or you have to have a conversation that you feel might be tense or stressed or may become heated, I recommend practicing any one of these techniques. So tapping on the back of the hand, saying whatever state it is that you would like to feel out loud. If there are people present, you can do that under the table, repeat the words in your head and just tap your hand underneath the table. So they're very, very simple techniques that you can use for yourself. And I may not have time to go through this, but if you have time, I recommend taking what's called the money type quiz. Now, money types are dynamic. They are not static. So it's not like your star sign. So it's very important to be aware of where you are at the moment with your relationship to money. So today you might be feeling like the victim, oh my goodness, why does this always happen to me? And just this is just not fair, and none of this is right. You may well be in the tyrant space, which is that very controlling, authoritarian, I'll show that person, that almost space of micromanagement. You may well be in this space where I'll just stick my head in the sand and everything will be fine and everything is fine. So it's important to be aware of what mental space are you in at the moment in relation to your relationship with money. And it's important to be aware also is that these archetypes are dynamic. So it is possible, okay, right, I'm very aware at the moment I am in this space. This is not the space that I would like to be in. So I am choosing through techniques and tools that I can teach you, I am going to choose to shift my energy into more warrior magician, which are the ideal money types, or maybe even into this space as well. So the quiz is totally free. And you can take it as many times as you want, and you will get your results by email. So if you tuned in today, one, or you listened to Julia's piece, you have options around how you decide to go through your separation and divorce process, depending on what you're in and also what country you're in. So you can do it all yourself if you want. And doing it yourself is good. I would only recommend using this technique if the lines of communication are open with the other person and the agreement is mutual. So that is important to be aware. And there is high elements of trust in the DIY process. It is cheaper. It might take that little bit longer, but it is less stressful and works really well when both parties are open and willing to pursue this process. The next method is the collaborative process, where it is one legal representative and two people. So the lawyer or solicitor works collaboratively. There's a lot of trust implied in this process, but you're less likely to do things wrong because somebody else is filing the paperwork for you, talking you through the process, guiding you through it. But again, it is important that the lines of communication remain open and that the communication is done on a one-to-one. So it's not, I'll get my solicitor to ring your solicitor, who will then ring you, because that's really when then costs start building up. And also things can get lost in translation when messages are being communicated to multiple third parties. Another method you could explore is mediation. And mediation, agreements achieved through mediation are far more likely to remain in place because neither party should feel kind of hard done by. So mediation is generally done where everybody is sitting around the table and the communication is facilitated by the mediator. Now, a mediator may or may not be a solicitor. If they are not acting in a legal capacity. They are acting in a capacity of a mediator, which is slightly different. So their role is not to implement or enforce the law. Their role is simply to guide the communication and to ask questions that will bring the other person out in a very gentle, compassionate, and impartial method. And there are different types of mediation as well. So mediation doesn't have to take place where everybody is sitting around the table, because one party may not want to do that or may not feel comfortable. So mediation can take place actually in different rooms. But the best methods of mediation are where there is open communication and the conversation is facilitated by a trained third party. You have other options where you can introduce external influence, and that is really where the communication, maybe the lines of communication have broken down, and it has those communications are taking place with a third party, usually a solicitor. That can be quite slow because there's sort of 2 and 3 layers. And the conversations often are asynchronous. So I will instruct my solicitor to do something, who then phones the other party's solicitor, who then rings the other party. And so, things can get lost in translation. Costs can build up quite quickly. And it can take that bit longer. And then really you're kind of, your last option really is where things just are not progressing, and your only option then is to pursue something that the courts are instructing. So that would be judicial separation or something along those lines. So generally, I say, look, try and explore the first 3 options if you possibly can. So whether that's hiring a divorce coach, giving it a go yourself, hiring a collaborative lawyer, hiring a mediator. keep going. And this really should be your last option. So money coaching fits into all of these steps. And that's important because, as I said, it is a wraparound approach. And I also work in harmony with whoever else is on your team. So if that is your mediator, if that is your solicitor, if that is your accountant, if that is your financial planner, whatever, the money coach will work together with the other person. So when it comes to kind of negotiating on, well, this is what I would like, try and create a value-based exchange. So rather than using money as a weapon, it's like, I would like this because this is the amount of money that I would like because I um, would like to take time out from my career to look after the children, or this is what I would like so that I can best support somebody else. So it's not simply this is what I want, full stop, and this is non-negotiable. It's these are NLP techniques. It's I would like this, or I desire, or I want this because, so that there is an exchange. And this is important then, that the other person sort of feels less hard done by it. And you go, okay, well, that makes sense. That makes sense as to why this request has been put in place. Sorry, I just see something came into the chat there. Okay. There we go, my slides. So what can I help you do? I can help you put your own numbers together. And if you don't know your own numbers, it's essential that you start tracking. So regardless of what stage of a relationship that you're in, or maybe you're not even in one, so whether you're going into it, you're in the middle of it, or you're coming out of it, it's essential that you know your own numbers, because knowing your numbers is very empowering. So at any point, if you ask me a question about anything that I have spent over the last 10 years or so, or earned or whatever, I could tell you exactly. And that's not from a place of control, but that's from a place of, I can answer that. And it should probably take me less than about 4 seconds to find out that piece of information. So it's really important that when you go into a negotiation, that you know what your own information is. If you are pursuing a collaborative approach, it's important that not only do you know, well, this is what I need to run my life, but this is what we need, or we needed to run our life as a couple. And it's not always okay, so okay, we'll just take what it cost us to have run our lives as a couple, and taking it and dividing it by two, because there may well be other costs. So if one person was uh, providing a service that otherwise would have been paid for, so whether that was childcare or the maintenance or the gardening or the whatever it was, if you then, okay, well, that service was being provided by that person and there was no fiscal exchange, well, now we have to hire somebody to do that particular task. So it's important to not only know your own numbers, but it's important to know your joint numbers as well. And that's something that money coaching can really help you do and put in place, and also present in a way that's easy to understand. If it's the back of an envelope, that's okay. But when something is better presented and is presented in a value-based fashion, it's much easier for the other person to, okay, I understand. I now know where this calculation number, whatever, has come from. So you haven't just pulled them out of the sky. Sorry, wrong way. There we go. So practical tips. So there are two strategies to coaching. So the neck up coaching looks at your mindset, those tools and techniques that I showed you about, tapping the back of the hand, stepping into the future you. That's all what I call the neck up coaching. Neck down coaching is the very practical side of things. How do I do this? How do I put this together? Where do I get this information from? What information do I need? So this is about getting your ducks in a row. And this is just a list of some of the documents or numbers that I recommend you put together. And you might say, well, gosh, that looks like a kind of an overwhelming list. But if you did one thing a day, or let's say you're going to do one thing, I'm going to tackle one thing this week. So this week, I am going to compile the last 3 to 5 years bank statements. Then next week, I'm going to get all of my statements for investments if you have any. So I added in a couple of little extra things, and there are documents that people sometimes forget. Um, get copies of your tax returns. Even if you're a PAYE employee, you really should be submitting a tax return, but your tax return for both parties, even if you are jointly assessed, gives a very clear indication of income, deductions, all of those things. Get your pay slips. Now, all of these documents should all kind of dovetail together. So your pay slips should sort of match your bank statements, and your pay slips should match your tax returns as closely as possible. You might want to also get all of your insurance documents. So that's more than just the house insurance and the car insurance. It's also the other things like, do you have mortgage protection? Do you have life cover? Do you have gadget insurance that covers all of the devices in the house? These are all very important documents to start gathering. Start gathering your pension documents. I also recommend, and I recommend for anybody to do this at least once a year, is to get your credit report. Now, you will not be able to get the credit report for somebody else. So if you're in Ireland, it's with the Central Credit Register, and we call them credit reports. If you're in England, I think they call them credit scores. And if you're in the States, they call them FICO scores. So they're called slightly different things in different countries. But it is something that I recommend every person over the age of 18 gets a copy of once a year. So you know where you stand. And I have seen it happen in situations where if a relationship has broken down, that sometimes another party can have taken out loans in the name of the other person. So it's really important to know what sort of information the banks and lenders are holding about you. And it's not all, most of the time it's 100% accurate, but the odd time there will be one or two errors. So start gathering lists of all your assets, and assets are more than just investments. An asset could be a painting, an asset could be a vintage car, an asset could be a piece of jewelry or a handbag, or an asset could be something that was inherited. Start gathering the list of all of your liabilities. Have the family home valued and have at least 2 valuations done. You might like to have 3. Valuers generally don't charge, so they'll give you a verbal valuation, and then you might like to take the midpoint. Be sure you have a copy of your marriage certificate. If you can't find it, you can request another one. But this is another important document that will be needed. If you have share options through your job. Now, crypto is another one that is kind of starting to come out of the woodwork. So you could, or the other person could have, well, I bought this €5 in Bitcoin 10 years ago, whatever. And so it's kind of, they're easy things to forget about. So if you have crypto holdings, also start compiling a list of what the children's current expenses are, whether it's clothing, education, school uniforms, dental is something, again, depending on what country you're in, you may well have to pay for dental or not, medical expenses, and then after school activities. So you might want to think about, okay, what are their current expenses and what expenses are the children likely to incur in the future? So generally, I say plan up to 3rd level education, depending on the child and depending on the age of the child. So this is just a sample of documents and information that is important to start compiling, and maybe tackle one thing a day or one thing a week. And what is really important is to build your team. So build your team of experts. So that's people that you have paid for, whether it's a tax expert, You may need to have psychological reports done. You might need to hire forensic accountants. You might want to hire, who knows, again, depending on what sort of stage you're at, you might want to hire a mediator. But your other supports are your personal supports. So be very aware of who you're listening to and what you're listening to. Surround yourself with people that will support you and that will support you impartially. I mean, if you need an ear to bend, it is preferable to have an ear to bend of somebody that doesn't charge you an hourly rate. And be very, very mindful of who you're listening to and what you're listening to, and taking your advice from the right sources. Oops, sorry, I'm going the wrong way. To summarize a couple of key takeaways, build in flexibility. What are you willing to negotiate on, and what is no, that's it. This is a line in the sand. So make sure you have an element of flexibility. Start changing your insurances. If you have insurances in joint names, start looking at getting quotes for moving those into your own name. Adjust your tax credits. Again, this is country specific, and this is also it will depend on your own personal circumstances, but there's lots of different scenarios. You could be married, living apart, jointly assessed, separated, living together, separately assessed. So there's lots of different type of scenarios, and the best person to advise you on that at no cost is your tax office. But they will probably need your social security number, and your a fairly recent payslip. So just make sure that you have allocated your tax credits in the way that's right for you based on your circumstances in that moment, because you can always change them. It's not like getting a tattoo on your face. So all of these things can be adjusted. Start opening new bank accounts. This is all part of your plan towards your new life. So if you have a joint account, open a bank account in your own name. And even if you have a current account at the moment and it's in your own name, but it's with the same bank as the other person, there is a psychological benefit to kind of starting afresh and opening something new. It's like, this is the new me, the new bank, the fresh start. That's it. I'm putting all of the things that no longer serve me, I'm putting all of those behind me. And if you are going to open a new bank account, just make sure you are banking with a bank that doesn't charge you charges. So if you're in England, I think Sterling is a good option. In Ireland, you can use EBS or N26. So again, it's you want to really just avoid any unnecessary costs. Something that people forget about is change your legacy plan. Everybody's legacy plan should be reviewed at least once a year. You don't necessarily have to change it, but if there is a major life event, such as marriage, remarriage, bereavement, moving house, any kind of life event, your legacy plan really needs to be reviewed. When I talk about legacy plan, I mean making a will and making sure it is up to date. So there is an element of paranoia when I talk about wills, that, oh gosh, if I make my will, I'm going to be hit by a bus. I made my first will when I was 20, and 35 years later, I'm still here, and I review it once a year. And when it comes to handling objections, and there will be objections and there will be pushback, take a step back. And this is where coaching can really help you. Ask yourself, am I objecting to that person, or am I objecting to that suggestion? So just these are questions that are very important to kind of ask yourself, right? Am I allowing my own hurt? Am I allowing my own ego? Am I allowing my own pain to get in the way here? And I am rejecting this because of the source that it's coming from? Or am I rejecting this just because I don't agree? And that is a huge space that coaching can really help you flesh out. Questions. If you have a question, you can either unmute yourself if you feel comfortable, otherwise pop your question into the chat. And And these, I must really learn how to generate QR codes. These are all of the ways that you can connect with me. My coaching is slightly different in that I don't really offer kind of long-term packages because I don't still want to be working with you in 6 months. And that doesn't mean that I don't like you or I don't like my clients, but my method of coaching is more it's more short term. So I say if there was one thing that I can help you with specifically in that moment, then I would be more than happy. But I would much rather show you and give you the tools that you can do this for yourself, which is far more empowering. But drop me a line or connect with me. And if there are any questions, please pop them into the chat or unmute yourself. I think I saw something come in there in the chat. Okay, it wasn't a question, it was a compliment. How wonderful. This was amazing, informative, lots of practical tools to use today. Thank you for your expertise and time. So thank you very much. And if there are questions that you want to ask and you don't feel comfortable putting them in a public space, just drop me a line. And I generally reply to emails within about 24 hours.